7,000 years ago, the Israelites settled in the land of Canaan. Over time, they were conquered by the Egyptians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. But after 70 years, the Babylonians were conquered by the Persians, who allowed the Jews to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. However, after a few hundred years, the Greeks came and took over, followed by the Romans. And in the year 70 AD, they destroyed the Jewish temple and forced most of the Jews to leave the land of Israel. For almost 2,000 years, Jews lived all over the world under the rule of different empires and kingdoms, always hoping to return to their homeland one day. It wasn't until the 19th century that European Jews began returning to Israel in large numbers. It's not as slaves or subjects of an empire, but as free people in their own right. This return was known as the First Aliyah, which lasted from 1881 to 1903 and brought around 25,000 Jews to Israel. At this point, the region was still called Palestine and was part of the Ottoman Empire. The majority of these early Zionists came from Russia and the other parts of the Russian Empire because of the pogroms against Jews there. Pogroms were organized violent attacks against Jews, usually by non-Jewish subjects of an empire or kingdom. They often included murder, rape, and destruction of property. Many Jews who came to Palestine during the First Aliyah were very poor and had to live in slums in cities like Jaffa, which is now part of Tel Aviv. Some of them joined the growing labor movement in Palestine and bought land in order to work it themselves rather than being employed by others. These early Zionists helped to establish the first Hebrew schools and newspapers in Palestine. They also helped to found the Jewish state of Israel in 1948. The Second Aliyah took place between 1904 and 1914 and saw around 35,000 Jews arrive in Palestine. Most of them came from European countries like Germany, Austria, and Russia. By this time, many of the European Jews were well off financially and had some capital to invest in Palestine. They established farms, factories, and businesses and helped to develop the economy of the region. During the Second Aliyah, more emphasis was placed on creating institutions to help new immigrants adapt to life in Palestine. For example, the Jewish National Fund was founded in 1901 to buy land for Jewish settlement in Palestine. By 1914, when the Second Aliyah ended, there were around 85,000 Jews living in Palestine. The Third Aliyah took place between 1919 and 1923 and saw around 60,000 Jews come to Palestine. At this point, it was clear that the Ottoman Empire was collapsing, and many Jews feared that if they waited too long, they might lose their chance to build a Jewish state in Palestine. So they decided to come to Palestine as quickly as possible. Many of the immigrants during the Third Aliyah were poor again and had to live in slums. This caused tension with the Arabs in Palestine, who felt that the Jews were taking their jobs and their land. This tension would eventually erupt into violence in the Arab riots of 1920, 1921, and 1929. Despite the violence, the Jewish immigration to Palestine continued during the Fourth Aliyah between 1924 and 1926, around 35,000 Jews came to Palestine during this period. By this time, it was clear that the British authorities were not going to stop Jewish immigration to Palestine. In fact, in 1922, the British government had issued a statement saying that they would encourage Jewish immigration to Palestine. This was good news for the Jews because it meant that they would be able to continue coming to Palestine, even if the Arabs didn't like it. It also meant that they would be able to create their own state in Palestine without having to fight a war with the British. The British were happy with this arrangement because they needed the Jews' help to keep order in Palestine. The Jews had a much lower crime rate than the Arabs, so they were able to take over many of the administrative functions of the Ottoman Empire. In 1936, the Jewish Agency, which was the main representative body of the Jews in Palestine, set up the Jewish Brigade Group. This was a military unit made up of Jewish volunteers from all over the world. The Jewish Brigade Group fought alongside the British against the Germans in World War II. After the war, the British government decided to hold a vote in Palestine to see whether the Arabs or the Jews wanted to create a Jewish state. The British thought that the Arabs would win the vote, but they were wrong. The Jews won by a large margin, and the State of Israel was born on May 14, 1948. After the creation of the State of Israel, many more Jews came to Israel. During the Fifth Aliyah between 1940 and 1951, around 650,000 Jews came to Israel during this period. most of them from Europe. At this point, Israel was at war with its Arab neighbors, and many of the immigrants had to go to refugee camps. While the fighting was going on, but despite the hardships, the Jewish immigration to Israel continued during the Sixth Aliyah. Between 1952 and 1961, around 150,000 Jews came to Israel during this period, most of them from North Africa. At this point, Israel was no longer a poor country. In fact, it was one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. So the immigrants during the Sixth Aliyah were able to find good jobs and homes as Aliyah. The Seventh Aliyah began in the early 1970s and has been going on ever since. Around 1 million Jews have come to Israel during this period, most of them from the former Soviet Union. Unlike the immigrants during the earlier Aliyat, the immigrants during the Seventh Aliyat are not really fleeing persecution. They're coming to Israel because they want to live in a Jewish state. Some of them are also coming to escape the anti-Semitism of European countries. Whatever their reasons, the immigrants during the Seventh Aliyah have been very successful. Many of them have become doctors, lawyers, scientists, and business people. They have also helped to make Israel one of the most prosperous countries in the Middle East. Israel is now home to around 7 million Jews from all over the world. They have come to Israel for a variety of reasons, but they have all contributed to making Israel the thriving and diverse country that it is today. I hope you enjoyed learning about the history of Israel. If you did, please like this video and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.